And again, do not use any decimals, so you're not going to be rounding off or anything like that. So in number 1, you remember you got to make sure it's in a standard form, and it is. So what's A in this case?
3.
What's B?
1.
And what's C?
4.
Okay, so you're gonna put that into your formula. So you're gonna say x equal the opposite of B, -1, plus or minus. Now, Randy, I'm not sure. You always keep forgetting to put the plus or minus. I take points off for not doing that. Okay. All right. -1 plus or minus the square root of B in parentheses 1. What do I do to that? Squared minus 4 times A, 3 times C, which is 4. All of that. So some of you are only drawing the division symbol like halfway. So if you saw in the worksheet you got back, if you saw me extending it, I took points off. Don't let me extend it for you. Okay? All right. All over 2 times what? 3. So I get equal -1 plus or minus the square root of, what's 1 squared?
1.
Okay, what's a -4 times 3 times a +4? Use your calculator if you need to. 48. All over what? 6. So equal -1 plus or minus the square root of what? -47 all over what? 6, because that's where I'm at. Okay, now remember, I'm taking the square root of a negative number, which you know is not a real number. It's an imaginary number. So you got to remember that the square root of a -1 is defined in that video you watched. You saw that the square root of a -1 was defined to be what number? I. So that imaginary unit. So when you look at the square root of -47, I'm just going to do it here. Do y'all agree that's the same thing as saying the square root of a -1 times the square root of 47? And what's the square root of -1? Can I simplify the square root of 47? Nope. Okay, so you'd say I times the square root of 47. And we tend to put the I in front of the radical because what some of you are doing when you put the variable like in back of the radical, it looks like it's underneath and it should not be underneath sometimes. So that's why you always put it in front. So don't put the I in back because if you make it look like this, see it looks like it's underneath, right? I'm marking it wrong because it's not supposed to be underneath, right? It's just supposed to be I, not the square root of I. It's just supposed to be what? I. So put it in front. All right, so here this becomes -1 plus or minus what? I square root of 47 over 6. So they're your two solutions. They're complex solutions. They're complex numbers with an imaginary unit. So -1 plus I square root of 47 over 6, and the other one's -1 minus I square root of 47 over 6. Okay, now let's look at number 3. What are you going to do in 3? Standard form. So 2x squared minus 6x plus 5 equals 0? Okay. So what's A?
2.
What's B?
-6.
And what's C?
5.
Okay. So x equal the opposite of B
6.
plus or minus the square root of -6 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A, right? 2 times 2? So that's 6 plus or minus the square root of -6 times itself is 36. Now what's a -4 times 2 times a +5? 40. So minus 40 though, right? All over what? 4. So that's 6 plus or minus the square root of what? -4. Good. All over 4. Now let's think about the square root of -4. First of all, I know that this is going to involve the number I because I'm dealing with the square root of a negative number. But when I simplify the square root of a -4, what is that?
I2.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought the I too. So when you write it though, always if the radical is no longer there, put the I in back of the number. Because it looks weird to say I2, it looks better to say 2I. If the radical is there, put the I in front, because when you put it in back, sometimes it looks like it's underneath, and that's where you lose points. So in other words, you're going to write this as 6 plus or minus 2I divided by what? 4. Okay? 2I divided by 4. All right. Now, simplify if possible. So you see that 6, that 2, and that 4? What do they have in common? 2. So they're all divisible by 2. So the answer should be 3 plus or minus I divided by 2. That's your answer. 3 plus or minus I divided by 2. All right. Let's see. Let's look at number 5. Okay, number 5, what are you going to do first? Standard form, so you're going to subtract 7 from both sides. But I can combine like terms in this case. So I get 2x squared minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. So A is 2, B is, and C is 1. So x equals 4 plus or minus the square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Right? So I get 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 minus 8 all over 4. So that's 4 plus or minus the square root of 8 over 4. All right, so that's where I'm at. Am I going to have an I? No. But can I simplify the square root of 8? Yes. The square root of 8 is 4 times 2. So the square root of 4, square root of 2. So what do I get? 2 square root of 2? So this becomes 4 plus or minus 2 square root of 2 divided by 4. Now you see this 4, the 2, and the 4? Can I simplify that? Yes. What do they all have in common? 2. So that's going to be 2 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is what? 1. 1 times square root of 2 is? Square root of 2 divided by 4 divided by 2 is 2. Okay, number 4, real quick. What's A? What's B? And what's C? All right, so M equals opposite of B plus or minus the square root of 6 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. So that's negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36. Now what's negative 4 times 1 times 17? A negative. What is it? 68. All divided by 2. What's 36 minus 68? 32, is that right? All over 2. All right, now let's simplify the square root of negative 32. So we'll go right here and do that down here. Square root of negative 32. So I agree that's going to be the square root of a negative 1 times the square root of 32? Square root of negative 1 is what? I. All right, now, is there a perfect square that goes into 32? Really? 16 is the largest. 16 times 2. And what's the square root of 16? All right, now, remember in the first one we did, it was just I times the square root of 47? Here you can get I times 4 times square root of 2, right? See how it looks? I times 4 times square root of 2? All right, but here's how we prefer to write that one. So if the 4 wasn't there, you would just say I square root of 2. Since the 4 is there, you're going to say 4I square root of 2. So it'll be 4I square root of 2. That's how you really want to write this. Okay? So always put the radical last, and then the I goes in front, and then any coefficient goes in front of that. 4I squared root of 2. So that goes, what? 4 times 1 times 17. 4AC. 4 times 1 times 17. That's part of the formula.
Are we on number 4? Yeah. Where'd y'all get a 4?
The formula. 4 squared minus,
B squared minus 4AC.
times A times C.
Okay, just a
Okay, all right, so we got to go on. All right, so that becomes negative 6 plus or minus the square root of, well, that's 4I squared root of 2, right? Over 2. Okay? All right, so then, see these that I have circled? Can I reduce that? Yes, they're all divisible by what? 2. So negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3 plus or minus 2I squared root of 2. All over what? 1. But anything divided by 1 is itself, so rewrite that to just be what? Minus 2I squared root of 2. Okay? All right. So you are going to have one on your final with that I in it. All right. So here's we didn't do the others because I don't have time. So we didn't do number 2, nor did we do number 6, but here's the key to those. Is it this one? Oh, no, that's not this one. No, I didn't. Okay. I didn't print the key out for this one. Oh yeah, I did. I'm sorry. Okay, here it is. Yeah. Okay. So here it is. This is the key to what we just did. All right, so we did not do number 2, but the answer's there. And we did not do number 6, but the answer's there. Okay? I moved. Don't just don't tell her.
He skipped me again?
No, I did not. Okay, now, this is the, I think it was a worksheet 16.3 part C. Did y'all do that? Some of you did. Some of you did, and there were only 3 of you that turned it in.
I emailed you about it.
Okay. When did you email me?
When I emailed you my other ones, I asked about that
Oh,
one.
I didn't even see that in your email.
It said it was due today. I didn't know if we were supposed to do it.
Okay, well, here's the, yeah.
We'll turn that in before you get your,
Is that the part C?
Yeah, it's supposed to be right here. I can do it. Okay.
Go ahead and turn it in. So,
Oh, no, you graded it.
Okay. Or do you have part
I
C?
had to print it out at home.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, don't worry about it. Here's the answers to it. Just take one, pass this back. So I'm not gonna, if you did it, it's not gonna count against you. Because it's just one worksheet.
Okay.
All right, there's the key. So you need to try and do those problems that's on the key though. Yes.
Wait till we finish the answer after.
What's your question?
Where did that two go? What number is that? Number 5. When you simplified it, where did that 2 in front of the square root 2 go?
It's a one.
It's a 1.
It's a one.
No, over 1.
It's a one.
That's, we divided everything by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 2. I don't know. But I'm not sure where you got the 4 from. Okay? All right. Okay, so on your study guide, so we did, on the back part, we did this one. So solve a quadratic equation using quadratic formula, and I said with imaginary solutions. Okay? Now notice, guys, I put 16.3 part C here. That's that key I just gave you. But then also, you also need to put down there's also 16.3 part D that I gave you as well with the key. Okay? So there are 2 things you can look at. Okay, now, next thing I want to do is this one. Let's go ahead and solve a radical equation. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's do this one. Let's go ahead and do this one here. Solve a quadratic equation using the square root property. Okay? One of the worksheets you had to turn in a while back had to do with that plus or minus. That's the one you turned in today, remember? Okay. So that's going to apply to this, and that's why I asked you to do those worksheets, because it's going to apply to what we're about to do.